All right, welcome everyone. It is InDesign Tuesday. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. My pleasure to be streaming to you live on this rainy in Atlanta Tuesday afternoon. So welcome for the people I see all over the world. I see Colleen over in South Africa, over on YouTube. Thanks for watching. And I see some folks, Manel joining over on Twitter, and Victoria just popped in on Facebook, and Cindy just popped in on YouTube. So I could keep going around, but you get the idea. Thanks for all the people watching on the various platforms. This stream is live on primarily on the Facebook InDesign page and YouTube and Twitter today. But of course, we stream on Behance and LinkedIn as well. So with that said, thanks for joining me. And if you are watching this on the replay, if you're watching the replay, I'm going to go back in time now. This was a live show. So the people I'm talking to were live at the time, and hopefully are still alive when you watch this. Kidding. Yes, I hope they're still alive. Anyway, so with that said, we're going to dive into a user-requested topic. I like to do those whenever I can. This is someone that just could not get their head wrapped around the way images work inside of InDesign with, of course, frames and making the images fit, and what are the options for making them fit and putting borders around them and rules around them and so forth and so on. So we're just going to do a quick tutorial, beginner tutorial for people that need to know that stuff. If you are an expert at InDesign, this is not for you because you already know how to do all that, but you're still welcome to hang out and watch just in case there's something you don't know. Maybe you'll see something. All right. Yes, Maurice. Maurice is in the house. Yes, and I am in the house as well. So I don't know what flag that is, but welcome for whatever country you're from. I'm not great at knowing flags. Sorry. But thanks for being here. And let's go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my desktop where I've got Photoshop open. No, we want InDesign. Let's switch over to InDesign where I've got InDesign open. I was kind of experimenting. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's go ahead and start from scratch as we like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new document. When I create my new document, of course, it always takes me to the new document window, which lets me choose from recent sizes and templates I've used before, as well as any saved templates and sizes I've done. So when you go down here, by the way, and you save one of your presets, that's where it will be. And you can also choose a print, web, and mobile size, just as a quick recap for people that were like, hey, what's this stuff? All right, I'm just going to go ahead and create a wide document. I'm going to do no facing pages. We're just going to do one page for now. That will probably get us through today. And I like to do wide on the live streams just because I don't have to scroll up and down a tall page. Wide, you can see everything happen. All right, let's go ahead and do that. Let's create. And that will give us our default document size, which I've used this size a million times. We're going to talk about frames. I did a whole thing on a crash course on InDesign. You can go back and watch that stream where I kind of talked about a lot of this already. But today we're going to concentrate primarily on images and frames and the fitting options for those images and how you can kind of maybe even set some of that up front, how you could even set up an object style to style a frame, so forth and so on. So with that said, Jamie's in the house. What's going on, Jamie? So I'm going to go ahead and just start with the most basic frame, the frame that probably people use the most, the rectangular frame tool. You might say, well, I see two rectangles, again, for beginners. What's the difference? Both can be used as frames. The biggest difference is people tend to use the one with the X's in them. So there's the rectangle, ellipse, and polygon as containers for images. And they use the one that doesn't have the X in it, kind of like a border. But again, they work the same. I used to make the joke back in the day. The ones with the X's in it were for people who feel more comfortable coming from Quark Express because their placeholders always had a little X in them. But anyway, doesn't matter which one you use. I'm going to use the one that with the X in it. I'm just going to draw out a frame. Now, the idea here is that you're making the frame the size you need it to be for your layout. Like, I just arbitrarily drew one, but if I were working within columns, if I was working within a specific format, I'd be sizing that frame to fit in that format. And whatever image I place into it, I would want to fit in that size. So you can draw it out willy-nilly like I just did. You can also go up and specify the width and height of your frame in whatever measurement system you want. So right now it's measured in inches, which is what I prefer, but I could say 3.5 inches, or I could say points, or I could type in whatever measurement I want, and it would do the conversion for me. So if I wanted to make it, for example, a typical US business card size, that would be 3.5 inches by 2. I know your card can be bigger, it can be smaller, but that's been the size for years. Then if I get out of that, sorry about that. If I get out of that, that will make it exactly that size. So I'm saying I want my content to come in and fit within that size. So let's talk about that. Let's move this over here, and now let's bring in a photo. All right, so I'll go to my libraries. You can use file place. You can drag it from a library. You could drag it from the desktop. You could drag it from another open application. You can copy and paste. All kinds of ways to bring in content. I like libraries because they're visual. They're right there in all my applications, and all my Adobe applications can see those libraries. All right, so I'm going to bring in this Ferris wheel shot. Now, when I drag it in, right now InDesign is saying, where do you want it? Do you want it just, if you click, there, I'm going to build a frame for you. I'm just going to put it on the page at 100%. Undo. Or you want to drag it out. Then I'm going to make a frame that's exactly the right proportions of whatever size you drag out. Great. But we want it inside of the frame that we already designated. So when I just go ahead and click inside that frame, I'm going to get probably just a lot of blue sky. Or in this case, I'm not going to get blue sky because I forgot and I left my default on the center. So I'm going to get right in the center of this Ferris wheel. And what determined that was when I was experimenting a minute ago, I left this on center. Normally it's in the upper left corner. And that just determines, so let's undo that. I'll show you what you would get by default. That just determines, hang on, this particular frame is stuck there. But anyway, that would normally determine where your content is going to start from. And this one is already on the center. Okay, but anyway, now I got the content in the center. Well, wait, I can't see all of the Ferris wheel. I can't see the sky. I can't see the rest of this image because it came in at 100%, in this case in the middle or in the upper left corner by default. Now what? Now we get into the fitting options. So, if I want it to stay 100% and I only want to see part of it, maybe I'm using the frame as a crop, well, I've accomplished that. The frame is cropping the rest of the image off. If I want to be able to see a particular part of the image, maybe I want the top of the Ferris wheel. Maybe I want that topmost car. Well, I know there's a car. If I keep going around, the car is probably right there. Well, I could just drag it until I found the car. Oh, there's the topmost car. Oh, I moved the frame that time. There's the topmost car. I did it. But that took a few clicks and a few drags to get there. So let's undo. Let's get it back up there. I've teased about this before, using what I have always deemed for the last 20 years, patient user mode. Then you can see what you're doing and you can do it all in one click. What is patient user mode? A term I came up with. It means instead of me clicking and dragging the grabber hand or content grabber, I'm going to hold it down and count to 2. 1, 2. Now I can see. Because now I can see exactly where my content is, what's going to be cropped off, where I want this image, anywhere I want it to be, and now I let go and I've done it in one step. So that's if I do want the image to be larger. I want to use my 3.5 by 2 inch frame to fit it, to fit a specific space, and I want the image to fit inside of it, only part of it. So that's done. But what if I undo, go back to the way it was, I put this image in here, and no, I need to see all of it. That's where the fitting options come in. So let's go through them one by one. These have changed over the years, and they've changed not only, they haven't changed what they do, but they've rearranged where they are. We don't care about the way they used to be, we care about the way they are now. And there is one new one. So, first one is the one that I probably use 99% of the time. That is, and Billy, thanks for the command keys. We don't do command keys here because you wouldn't see what I'm doing. So I always explain where things are from the menu, from the options bar. You'll learn the keyboard shortcuts to save you time going forward. But for beginners, it's best to know where things are instead of someone handing out a key. And if you ever need to do it manually, you would never know how because no one ever showed you. All right, so thanks for the suggestion, but we don't do keys here. All right, so let's go in, unless we do both. All right, let's go in and let's use that first one, which is the one I use most of the time, fill frame proportionally. The reason I use that one most of the time is because it does what I want most of the time. It does it so that it fills that exact 3.5 by 2 inch space, nothing left over, but it may have cropped something off. And usually, depending on the image, I'm okay with it cropping something off. If it's a photo like this, and you're missing part of the sky, missing part of the Ferris wheel, not going to really impact the story. If it were a logo or a person's head or feet or whatever, that would be important information that I would want to keep. So that's the 1% of the time where this might not work. So in this case, what did it cut off? If I hold it down and count to 2 again, we'll see exactly what it cut off. It cut off a little of the top and a little of the bottom. And if I say, well, I don't really care so much about the sky, I can move it up a little bit more and get exactly all of the Ferris wheel in with some of the sky missing. Okay, so please repeat the cropping explanation. I'll do it again, but I won't repeat this one, but I'll do it on the next one. All right, so we got the image filling the frame, no white space left over, exactly 3.5 by 2, missing part of the image, and that's okay. Okay, what's our next option? That was fill frame proportionally. What's the next one? Well, the next one is probably the one I use that other 1% or 0.5% of the time, and that is fit content proportionally. So what that means is it will make sure your Ferris wheel fits your whole image. But if it's not the right proportions, it's going to leave some white space. So let me undo. Let's put it back to the way it was, and let's try that option. There's the white space on the sides because the frame doesn't exactly match the proportions of the photo. So therefore, if I need to see all of that photo, let's say there was a logo, important information all the way around the edge, then I got to make this decision. Is it more important to see that content? Probably in that case. Then the frame doesn't exactly need to be exactly this size because the image becomes the most important thing at that point. Okay, how do I get rid of that white space? Now that I've decided I need to see all of the image, I don't want that white space hanging out left over on the sides. What do I do next? Well, there is an option for that as well. If we go up and look at these next set of options, there's one called Fit Content to Frame. That's not the one we want. We want this one. Fit frame to content, meaning, okay, I've got the image looking exactly the way I want it to look. The frame's not exactly the size I need it to be, but that's okay. The image is more important in this case. I just don't want any white space left over. So instead of you grabbing the handles and pulling them in, just click one button and it'll do it for you. Done. That means take whatever the image is and just fit the frame down to it. Whatever size that is, I don't care because the most important thing, if we're going to flip gears, is the image in this case. All right, let's undo, because there was an option I didn't show. And this is the option I don't think I ever use. Because what this is saying, this first one, is saying fit the content to the frame. That means even if the proportions are off, I want you to stretch it. And I want you to just like stretch it and just make it, distort it, and make it fit the frame. And the reason I don't do that most times is because I have images that I'm placing that I don't want distorted. I don't want them stretched. I don't want a person looking wider or skinnier or taller than they're supposed to be. So if it were an abstract pattern, a wall, or something that you couldn't tell if it got stretched, no big deal. But if it's an object that we would recognize, stretching it could be a problem. So if I do that, that will fill the frame. In this case, not too bad. But if I were to zoom in, if we were to look at that, those cars are a little wider now than they were before. So this will be the difference. If we go to that, see, it stretched them out to make it fit. And that's why I don't ever really use that option, because I don't want my images stretched. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I see an image stretched and I can tell that it's stretched because it was an image that shouldn't have been stretched. So if I see that, oh God, it's just like nails on a chalkboard. It drives me crazy. So don't stretch images that shouldn't be stretched, meaning content that shouldn't be distorted. All right, so back to the cropping example. I'm gonna do that one more time. So let's say that I want, I know I'll have something that's not the right proportions because I'm gonna drag it out. I'm gonna make it a perfect square. So I'm gonna make this, oops, wrong setting. I'm gonna make this 2 inches by 2 inches. So now it's a perfect square, 2 by 2. I don't have any perfect square images. So if I drag in, for example, this home office interior and drop it in, then we don't see all of it, but that's okay. If I fill the frame proportionally, we see most of it because some of it's being cropped off for the person that wanted that explanation before. And now if I go in, hold it down, count to 2, I'll see what's being cropped. So I can say, oh, no, this side of the room is more important, that should be shown. Or this side of the room is more important, that should be shown. It needs to stay in a square, and I'm okay with some of that being cut off. If that's the case, that's what we just did. All right, now if we go back, undo. The cropping example I gave was, well, what if I needed to see some of it? I can hold it down, and I can say, oh, I only want to see that chair, for example. The rest is cropped off. What if I want to see more of it, but not all of it? Let's say that at 100%, it's too big, but I don't want to scale it all the way down to where it fits. Well, just because it comes in at 100% doesn't mean you have to keep it at 100%. You'll notice that you have a selection tool, and you also have a direct selection tool. The selection tool, by default, is the one you use the most. It selects the frame. So if I move the frame around, the content moves around with it. Great. I can line those things up, and they're perfectly aligned on the left side now. But if I need to move the content in the frame, well, rather than make you switch tools all the time, they came up with this content grabber. And that's what it does. It lets you grab the content inside and move it around. But what if I need to scale that content, not the frame? So that's what the direct selection tool would let you access. If I click on if I get out of this, and click on the image now, you'll see this brown border all the way around. That's the actual image. That's what I could now scale. So I could scale that mathematically up here. I could make it like not 15 inches wide by 10 inches. I can say maybe make it 7 inches wide. And that will drop it down to 7 inches. Then I can move it around. And it's now 7 by 10. Ooh, that doesn't do it proportionally. So I need to lock that next time. Undo. Let's lock those proportions. All right. So we don't want to stretch it. 7 inches. There we go. So that'll also change the width and the height at the same time. That will let me now size it down to 7 inches instead of 15, basically almost dropping it in half. And now I can still move it around inside. I'm using the direct selection tool to move it around. You can also just grab a handle. If I hold down my shift key and scale it, I'm now scaling that image inside the frame. I can make it bigger, make it smaller, or you could type in an exact size or an exact percentage using your direct selection tool. Okay, next up. What if I want to scale the frame and the image at the same time? Well, you probably have been here before where you grab the selection tool, you grab a corner, you do that, and all it did was make the frame bigger, made your crop bigger, but it didn't make the image bigger. And now it just redid it. Like, I didn't want to show that much of the table. Undo, because there's a keyboard shortcut that we do need to use, and we do need to hold down. This is really the best way to do it. Your Mac command key or your PC control key tells it to scale both at the same time. The shift key also tells it to keep it proportional. So command shift or PC control shift, when I hold those down and then grab a corner, I am now scaling both at the same time. So I'm making this crop bigger, I'm making the frame bigger, I'm making the image bigger, but I'm not changing the crop, I'm not changing the way it looks inside the frame. So same thing up here. If I wanted this to be bigger, command shift and drag, and now that is the same size as the other one. And I can move this one down a bit. Okay. Next up, along those same lines, is if you grab an image and you place it or drag it in, and you don't create a frame first, like I did, I showed the example earlier. And I want to now put this image right here, and I can just drag it until it fits, and it will keep the proportions. I'm not holding down the shift key, I don't have to hold down anything, and it will make it fit proportionally and make it fit to whatever I'm visually seeing. I can always change it later, but when I let go, that's it. That person has now been placed in their frame, 100% of their image is showing, nothing's being cropped off. I didn't have to hold down the shift key because InDesign detected the dimensions of the image, detected the proportions, and automatically gave me what I needed. Okay, now along those same lines, let's talk about maybe some more design things you might do. So we've just basically placed 3 images in various frames. And those 3 images, if we were to look at them printed or PDF'd, they would look just like that. It would just be 3 images on a white piece of paper. If I want those images to actually have a visible border, a visible frame that we could see, then I can do that. I can just select this image and I can say, you know what? Here's my choices here. Here's my frame choice. I can make this whatever color I want. Here are my choices of different frames. So these have been around since the 90s. Thick, 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 thin, taking me way back to the PageMaker days. But they're here. They let me use them. And I can, of course, it's already turned on. It's just the reason you don't see it is because it's at 0 points. So if I were to go ahead and say, well, make it 1 point thick, then that would make a 1 point thick, visible, printable border around the image without me having to draw a border around it. Because the frame itself, if I were to show preview, that's the way it would actually look printed. Now, that doesn't mean you can't play with that. That doesn't mean you can't like make or simulate a photo in a frame with a mat around it. So for example, if I wanted to do that and kind of make this look like maybe it's on the wall of a museum or the wall of a gallery, then I would maybe make that a little thicker, maybe make it 2 points. And then I could just expose the white around it. I can just make the frame a little bigger, and that will make the image not go all the way out to the edge. And now we have this look of, oh, that looks like a professional print on the wall. And maybe I drop in a signature on it and a number to show that it's a limited edition. But you get the idea. So the frames they don't have to be nudged up against the image. They can be away from the image, and of course they can have a border of any style. Now, speaking of styles, and I always forget about this because I rarely ever use them. This particular image has just the black two point border around it. We can go in and we can also specify what the corners look like. So we can have rounded corners is built in, but if you want something a little bit fancier, like fancy, you could have fancy, you could have bevel, you could have inset, you can have inverse rounded. These haven't changed in like 20 years either. So maybe it's time for some new ones in design team. But anyway, we take us way back to the 90s and we get our fancy border. There's a reason why you don't see these anymore, because no one's using them. But anyway, you have that option. You can be retro. You can go back to the 90s. You can play around with those framing options. All right, next up. What if I don't want to do that work every single time? What if I don't want to have to draw a frame, fit the content in the frame, or bring the content in, then fit it in the frame every single time? Well, you don't have to. You can do some things up front to make it easier. Number one, if you create a frame and you want that frame to be whatever size, so in this case, let me get out of print preview. We can make this whatever size we want, but before I bring anything into it, and let me get rid of this one for a minute. Before I bring anything into it, I'm gonna put it here. I'm gonna do some things to it first before I put content in, because I already kind of know what I want it to be. So I'll go to my object menu. I'll come down to fitting, and then there is this option for a frame to set it up with what you want. So if I do frame fitting options, This is what I meant by I had already changed the default to center. So if I want center, great. If not, I don't have to. And I can say, you know what? No matter what I put into this frame, I just want it to fill it proportionally. So fill frame proportionally. Just do it. I don't want any extra crop amount around it. I can have it auto fit, but I will just set that up ahead of time. And you might think, well, how's that any different than doing it after the fact? Well, now that I've done it, it's applied that characteristic to the frame itself so that before I put it in content, I can say, ooh, I'm going to need 3 of those. I'm going to need one here. I'm going to need one here. I'm going to need one there. So now all I got to do is drop my content in like that. Boom. Bam. I don't know what this one is. Pow. And the content's already fitting. So setting it up, duplicating that frame, or better yet, setting it up and going to your object styles and making it a style that you can style that frame or any other frame going forward with the frame fitting options. That means that you'll always be able to just drop content in without having to manually go through and size them one by one. All right, how did I space, sorry, I missed it. How did I space the frames border? All I did was just pull the frame out. So here, we'll do it again. So we set the frame to whatever size you want. And then I just pulled it away. Now I could mathematically, oh, sorry. Hang on, there we go. Oh, because, see, this one's set to auto fit, so that one won't work. I'm like, why is it changing the size? Because I set it to auto fit. Hold on, let's do it on one that's not set to auto fit. All right, like that one. All I did was pull it away. As long as it's not on auto fit, you will be able to you'll be able to see the spacing between them. We can pull this one over and we can actually get them to be the same size. There we go. Be a little nitpicky there, and we'll get them the same size. But that's all I did. So I just pulled the frame away from it after I added a border to the frame. All right, next up. And I think this is it for now. Let me think. There was one more thing I was going to show you. You got me thinking about the frame fitting options, dropping the frame in, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I know what it is now. Let's create one more frame. And let's say you create like a weird size frame, like something super wide, but you don't really have the content to support that. So it's going to be cropped, in other words. So I can bring this in. Hang on for a minute. And I'm going to try and prove a point. Let's see if I can get this to work. Let's drop her in. All right, if I drop her in, she's going to be 100% of the size, so we'll see whatever we see. Okay, we see her face. And it's not a good look because it's just the face. But normally, if you then do a fill frame proportionally, it will fill it. Oh, no, wrong option. There we go. Fill frame proportionally. You'll get that. So it did what you asked it to do, but it's still like, well, we know there's more forehead and we're like, we got more neck than we need. Why don't we bring her down a bit? That's what you would do visually after you saw it, because that would make sense. Well, there's one more option I didn't cover. Let me undo this. And it's called ContentAware Fit, this new button right here. ContentAware Fit is AI-based, meaning it looks at the frame, looks at the image, and says, I'm going to figure out what the subject of the image is and fit it to the frame as best I can. Like, because it can only do what it can do. Like, if the frame's a weird shape, can't fit it all in, but I know there's a person there, so I'm going to try and put the person in the focus of the frame. Let's see if it works on this image. So we'll just click on ContentAware Fit, and it said, oh, her hair needs to show. So again, AI isn't perfect, but at least it did make that attempt to show more of what that subject is. So in this case, I might decide, scale it down some more, move her around some more, like so. Or I might just decide, you know what, let's undo that. It might be okay if we just make that frame a little taller and then do our ContentAware Fit. And we get, again, the AI is trying to figure out what the subject is and show more of the subject. I don't agree with the positioning. I don't always agree with AIs. So I would hold it down, count to 2, and I would move it up because I would want to crop off more of the hair and never the chin. That's just me as a photographer. But that would be my look. So the AI, always try ContentAware Fit in conjunction with fill frame proportionally, because if you want it to try and figure out what the subject is and where it should be, then there it is. All right. Is there a keyboard shortcut to toggle auto fit instead of just clicking the auto fit button? I don't know of one, but there's always the option whenever you're in Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign of going up to your edit menu, coming down to keyboard shortcuts and investigating or creating one. So if there's something that doesn't have a keyboard shortcut and it's in that menu, you can make one if it doesn't already have one. All right, let's see. I think I saw another question there. Hello. All right, can you, wait, hang on, something went there, okay. Can you drop shadow an image that has a frame around it? Well, that's an interesting question. Yes and no. Yes, you can apply drop shadow, but the no part is it may not look the way you want it to look, depends on what you want. Because here's the interesting thing about transparency effects, and drop shadow is one of them, is that the effect is applied to the frame, not the contents of the frame. For example, if I select this image and I go in and add a drop shadow, which is going to be, there in my effects, drop shadow, there we go. And I click preview so we can see it. There, it does a drop shadow as you would expect around the frame, around the contents and the frame itself. So that did exactly what I wanted. I would change it, maybe not make it so dark, but it gave me what I wanted. Now, depending on what you're thinking it's going to do in a case like this, may be what you want, may not be what you want. So let's go ahead and apply drop shadow to this. And see, it's applying it to both, which may or may not be what you want. Because do you want that inset to look like this, or do you want it to look like both of these? You don't really get much of a choice in that case. It's applying it to both. So it's really applying it to the frame and the contents in the frame, not just the contents, is what I'm trying to say. So yes, you can, but it just depends on what way you'd want it to look. Blackboard. Yeah, okay, so good question. Jacqueline's asking if I'm really specifying the size, or I'm really specifying, and I also want to specify the frame around the visible border around it. Can I do both of those at the same time? Yes, you can, because anything you create, like this one, you can, again, save that as an object style. So let's create an object style so you can see what the definition looks like. So I'm going to call this style with border. All right. So now if I go into with border, we can look at what it can do and what it can't do. So what can it do? It can apply the fill, which has no fill right now. It can apply the stroke, which is the black line. It can apply any corner options, so forth and so on, paragraph styles, text frames. And more importantly, you'd also want to make sure that it applies the, what am I not seeing here? That it also applies the, not the text wrap, not the general. I just want to make sure I see it here. I don't see what I'm looking for. Not text frame. Yeah, that's all text frame stuff. So what we want to apply, text wrap and other, anchored object. There it is, frame fitting options. I was looking for this. So you just want to see how that's like got a line through it. So that means that it's not really doing everything. So we want to make sure that that is completely checked. So that if you did want it to also apply your frame fitting option as well as your stroke, which is at the top, then yes, it can apply both of those to the style. And you can go in and tweak any of those things. So if I say that I want to tweak the stroke or see what the stroke is, it will show it to me and show me if that's a two point. The color is unnamed, so forth and so on. Maybe I don't want it to be solid. Maybe I want it to be a different whatever. So now that I've applied that, let's see if this works. Here, let's create a new frame. And let's drop something into it. Go to our libraries first, or we'll just tear this off. Then go to our libraries, grab something. Let's grab something I haven't used yet. All right, and now if we go to our new style, that's what you get. So saving that style with the frame fitting options, with everything applied to it, lets me quickly format stuff to look exactly the same. Can you clip an image on a text or a single letter and add an effect to it? I don't know what you mean by that. From the sounds of your question, the answer is yes, but I'm just not sure exactly what you meant by that question. I'm going to go with yes. If you meant, can I, well, it depends on the letter. If you're talking about text frame, yeah, you could do that too. You could scale it. You could scale a frame that crops off part of the word and just shows part of the letter or whatever, and then apply whatever effects you want to that as well. So yeah, you could, if that's what you meant. All right. Apply drop shadow on the image before. Apply a drop shadow on the image before. Not sure what you meant there. The shadow is the shadow. So, and plus every image is in a frame, so it doesn't matter. Whether it's before or after, it's going to be, the results are going to be the same. All right. That is it. So with that said, I hope that you guys got something out of today. Again, like I said, this was a beginner requested topic. Someone says, can I do more intermediate and advanced topics? Sure, but my mandate has always been to include as many people as I can, because once you get the handle on what you can do and how to get started, finding how to do more is not hard to do. Like, you can do that, but I will certainly try and work in more, not just entry-level topics going forward as well. Always open to suggestions. So if you got a suggestion on a topic, something you want to learn how to do, I'm happy to do those as well. So just like today's was suggested by a user. All right, so with that said, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. Should be streaming the rest of the week. Also, if you're a photographer or into photography, I do have my master class. Bye everybody. Oh, wait. Overlay is possible to apply a blending mode. Yes, there are blending modes in InDesign. So the answer is yes. If you put two images on top of each other, you can